Hello, and welcome to my review of the Mythics of Secrets of Strixhaven. The first card is Decorum Dissertation. It says target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. It then has Paradigm, which lets you keep casting the spell for the rest of the game. The card is able to effectively draw cards in your next untap, which allows it to be great in grindy matchups. Ideally, this will drown your opponents in card advantage while drawing answers to protect your now lowered life total. It's similar to the Speed Demon, which usually gives 1 to 2 cards on end step and can draw more later on, though it is vulnerable to removal while Decorum Dissertation is not. It's part of a new cycle which is similar to the original Kamigawa block Epic cycle. Epic is the same as Paradigm, but you can't cast spells forever after playing it, so it's just slightly different. The Epic card Never Ending Torment lets you get rid of cards from your opponent's library, slowly decking them while they draw nothing of use. Though with it being 6 mana and relying on cards in your hand, I imagine the only one you're tormenting is yourself. Next up is Echo Casting Symposium. It creates a copy of a creature you control, and it has Paradigm. Ideally, it will flood your board with clones until your opponent runs out of answers to kill them. The card is like Extravagant Replication, except it can't hit any non-land, but it is immune to removal. The Kamigawa version of it was Eternal Dominion, which allows you to play anything from your opponent's deck ad nauseum. Echo Casting Symposium is much cheaper, but also less game-ending to balance it out. Emeritus of Abundance is a member of the Emeritus cycle, which each casts a spell from Alpha. This one lets you cast Regrowth to get any card back from your graveyard, and you can do it again if it lives while you have 8 or more lands. It's like an Eternal Witness, but with a bigger body that you have to invest more mana into. Although Regrowth is an on-rate effect that could probably be printed into Standard today with cards like Aurora Procession, which is instant speed but does cost blue mana. Although this card does provide a nice defense against creatures while also demanding removal against more controlling opponents, although it is clunky to make up for having lots of value. Emeritus of Conflict gives you access to Lightning Bolt when you cast your 3rd spell in a turn. You can then hold it up at instant speed, use it to re-prepare itself, or use it with its own first strike to take out a 5 toughness creature while keeping this guy. Although 3 1-mana spells is the soonest you can cast it, which means the soonest you can cast it is turn 4, so it is much more of a mid-range threat than an aggro card. It's similar to Ripley Vance, who deals 4 damage for free but costs 3 mana and you can't save it for later. Or even Pyromancer's Assault, which only triggers on the 2nd spell and is harder to interact with, being an enchantment, but only deals 2 damage and costs 4 mana. Emeritus of Ideation gives you Ancestor Recall to let you draw 3 cards. Ideally, it will replace itself, and then some while taxing your opponent with its Ward 2 ability. You can also cast Ancestor Recall twice if you untap with it if you have enough cards in your graveyard, which is also neat. It's also like Arcanus, who is more vulnerable to removal, but can protect himself better if you untap with him. Or like Ambling Starshaw, which gives you the cards without spending the mana, but it gets stunned. Emeritus of Truce gives you Swords to Plowshares if your opponent controls more creatures than you, which is made easier by giving a player a 1/1 flyer. So basically, if you both control the same number of creatures, you get swords, but if you control 2 less creatures than your opponent, you also get swords and a 1/1. It is neat that you can hold the swords at instant speed, making it a cool mid-range and control threat. Comparisons can be made to Biza, who has a similar comeback potential, or even the Wandering Emperor, which is a removal and threat that makes tokens as well. Emeritus of Woe is a demonic tutor on our body. Literally. It can then re-prepare itself on your end step if 2 or more creatures died this turn. Though for re-preparing it you need to wait another turn, since Demonic Tutor is a sorcery on end step. A neat thing is that you can tutor the spell that will cause 2 or more creatures to die, and then you can keep doing it over and over again. Existing versions of the effect are Varagoth, who needs to attack to get the tutor and costs 3 mana, but only tutors to the top of the library, or Lagomos, who can tutor for free, makes a creature cost 3 mana, but requires 5 creatures to die, though technically 4 since he gives you 1 to die. Germination Practicum puts 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control every turn, so it will be 4 counters when you next untap. But keep in mind that any future creature you play will need to live a turn in order to get the counters from the future casts. This card's strength comes from it being a game ender that sacrifices a bit of immediate power for future power in the rest of the game, allowing it to be useful even if you aren't winning right away. Overrun provides more power and trample, but only lasts for a turn, An endless form gives you lots of bodies forever, but being 8 mana and epic does make it a very nice option compared to Practicum. Improvisation Capstone gives you 4 more mana values worth of cards from your library when you cast it, and technically 8 total when you untap with it. Ideally, you pour out value while your opponent falls behind. While less burst advantage than Itali, it has more feature value while being harder to interact with. Undying Flames is the red epic spell. This also exiles cards from your library, but instead gives you damage instead of playing the cards, because why would you play the cards when you're so epic? Lorehold the Historian gives your instants and sorceries Miracle 2, so you can play them for 2 mana as you draw them. Coupled with having immediate value with haste and enabling miracles on your opponent's turn with draw discard, Lorehold can spit out nice value even if it dies soon. It compares to the historically good card Goldspan Dragon with its haste and ability to soft replace itself, though falling behind Goldspan's ability to make 2 mana when it attacks and gets targeted by a spell. Although Galvanoth gives you the same sort of a spell discount from the top, with it granting it for free, although without haste flying 2/2 worth of stats or draw discard. Mathemagics can draw you an exponential amount of cards, with 1 card for 2 mana, 2 for 4, 4 for 6, and 8 for 8, and even the ability to kill your opponent with 14 mana. It provides lots of flexibility. With a Banefire effect, for example, you would probably need roughly the same amount of mana to kill your opponent if you damaged them first, but it would cost more than Mathemagics if you didn't damage them first. Mathemagics is similar to Silver Scrutiny, which lets you draw 1 card for 3 mana, 2 for 4, 3 for 5, 4 for 6, but also gaining Flash when X equals 3 or more. Prismari the Inspiration gives all your instants the Sorcery Storm, which copies them for each spell you've cast before them that turn. This card will probably win the game on untap, but you need to untap with it. Its Ward 5 life is nice, but it's not quite exactly what you want compared to winning the game. It can be compared to Bloomburrow or Ral, whose ultimate gives Storm, though you need to charge him up with non-creatures to get there first. A more direct comparison is Thousand Year Storm, which costs 1 less mana, is harder to remove, but it doesn't count all the different types of spells you cast toward your Storm account. Professor Delienfeld gained a lot of life a turn, with an effective 10 life gained on entering if you include his loyalty. Plus being a source of repeatable removal or drawing cards, he is a versatile card. With a +2 and 5 starting loyalty, he is effectively immune to being killed by creatures if you plus him, which makes him demand Planeswalker-specific removal from your opponent. He also has an easy ultimate that makes your opponent lose life whenever you gain life, which is neat, but keeping loyalty on him and having removal primed and ready to go is an ultimate all of its own. He is similar to Liliana Untouched by Death, which does almost everything Delian does, but requires zombies. Or Verasca Gogori Queen, who does the same sort of removal-y things, but on non-lands with mana value 3 or less, but she can also give you cards on uptick, but you have to sack things. Quandrix the Proof replaces itself with Cascade and gives all your instants and sorceries Cascade. This renders Quandrix effectively resistant to counter spells, while still being very threatening with value. Comparisons can be made to Monstrous Vortex, which only costs 4 mana, but applies Cascade to creatures while also being able to cascade off of those creatures again. Imity is basically the same as Quandrix, but has a different restriction of only spells with mana value 6 or greater. Ralzeric, Guest Lecturer, can surveil 2 on uptick, repeatedly cause discard and unearth creatures from your graveyard. If you uptick, you might be able to find a creature which you can then reanimate the following turn with his -2 ability. You could even cause discard every other turn if you want against some more controlling opponents who don't have creatures to pressure him. Davril is a card that plays similarly to Ral, but he can't uptick, although he does provide a win con if they have few cards in hand. Tyvar does a similar sort of creature returning, giving you the mill right away at the cost of only hitting cards with mana value 2 or less. Restoration Seminar returns a non-land card from your graveyard to the battlefield forever, over and over for the rest of the game. Though keep in mind it can't be fizzled if your opponent exiles the card of which you're targeting, when you first cast it at least. This card will probably go better in a mid-range deck than a combo deck, because combo decks tend to prefer the reanimation of X at 4 mana or cheaper. But still, it's like a Moment of Reckoning, which is actually from the same set. That provides 4 reanimations right away, and it gives you some more flexibility for removal. This card is just better than Profound Journey though, because it goes on forever, instead of just rebounding once, but it can't hit land, so maybe that is something. Silverquill the Disputant gives your spells casualty, so they can be copied by sacking a creature. It is also nice so you can get immediate value from casualty later in the game if you have the mana to cast the spell in the same turn. And Silverquill costs less than the standard version of this effect Double Vision, which is 5 mana, so it's 1 mana cheaper, which is nice. But it does cost 1 mana more than Enhello. Although Enhello needs casualty 2 and has 3 colors, so they all have their unique strengths and weaknesses. The Dawning Archaic will provide you with free instants and sorceries on attack once you get it down by putting enough instants and sorceries in the yard. If you use lots of cheap spells, you'll cast it easily but with less of a payoff, or use more expensive spells to cast it for more of a payoff but harder to cast it to begin with. It has lots of options you can choose to play it. Funnily enough, it's very similar to Renegade Bull, who is printed in the Commander deck for the same set. With its cheaper initial cost but ability to cost less later in the game, they're both fairly even cards. Tolarian Terror is a cheaper version of this effect, but it doesn't do as much when it's on the battlefield. But the Dawning Archaic is also free if you go the Pie in the Sky route and puts lots of cards in your graveyard. Witherbloom the Balancer provides your instants and sorceries with affinity for creatures, while also having affinity for creatures itself, which can let you go wild with lots of overkill. Mycosynth the Golem is the artifact version of this card, and considering that costs $40, people really love that effect. Colony Hydra provides a similar advantage of being cheaper with more creatures, though with its power in raw, power, and trample, instead of additional cost reduction for your other spells. Withering Curse gives -2/-2 to all creatures, while also being a 3-mana destroy creatures effect if you gained life this turn. 3-mana sweepers are always something to keep an eye on, and this one even has additional modality, letting you only give -2/-2 if you don't want to kill all your own stuff and maybe get through for some damage. Though you can only do this if your life gain source is optional. If you want to cast on turn 3, you need a way to set up your life gain on turn 1 or 2 so that you can gain life on demand for turn 3. -2/-2 with minor upside is the baseline for this effect, so it's a nice fail case to fall back on. Bontu's Last Reckoning is an existing 3-mana sweeper. It has the small downside, though, of you not being able to untap your lands next turn. That's all for the Mythics of Secrets of Strixhaven. Hope you enjoyed, and if you're lucky, you might see another video today that's as fraction as interesting as mine.